Welcome to the Low Carb MD podcast. No one is beyond help. No one is beyond hope.
As we have always said, we are bringing you medical information and cutting-edge science, but none of this is medical advice. Please seek out input from your own doctor.
Hello and welcome to the Low Carb MD podcast. Tro, we found another smart one. First, I want to do a quick public service. This is not a medical advice, but this is a public service. Last night I was cutting peppers and I rubbed my right eye and I swelled my eye shut. So don't do that. It's not a good idea. So besides that, I think I'm doing all right, Tro. How are you, man?
Listen, I'm doing great. I'm really excited about this one. This is another East Coaster, Brian, another East Coaster who we're going to have on today. Somebody smarter than us who's going to tell us about genes and nutrigenomics. So I'm really excited about this one. And it's nice to have you back from Guatemala. You know, this is the second week in a row. So it's nice to have you back.
Yeah, it's good to be home. But I love it there too, but it's good to be home.
So today we have the esteemed Kristina Hess, okay, who's got more letters in after her name than I do. Awesome person. East Coaster here like me. She's out in Connecticut. Has been promoting low carb and ketogenic and also just healthy lifestyles in the kind of lower Connecticut area for a long time. We know each other because we are trying to bring keto conferences to the East Coast. And before I get into talking about that keto conference that'll be coming to the East Coast this year in September, but then also it's called Keto Symposium, and it'll also be in person the following year. We'll talk more about that. But let me first introduce her. This is Kristina Hess. She has a master's degree in clinical nutrition and integrative health from MUIH. She's got certifications in mindful eating, in hypnosis, and she started her passion. You know, she didn't always, find herself here. She was a school teacher at first, ended up getting her health coaching certification through the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, and just has constantly learned from then until now. And I know she's getting an advanced certification in Nutrigenomics now. So she's going to tell us all about genes. And we're going to get into a little bit about the Keto Symposium. So I guess before we get into all this, what is the Keto Symposium? Okay. And when is it? And tell us about it. And then maybe we can, after that, go into how you got started from being a school teacher to setting up a keto conference in the East Coast.
Thanks, Tro. Thanks for a great introduction. Brian, thank you so much for having me. Keto Symposium was born out of this desire to bring keto experts, low carb experts, and biohackers, anyone interesting in that space to our area, because that nothing like that was happening.
And seconds, right? Really? I mean,
right.
Nothing. There's been nothing here. Yep.
Yeah, you have to get on a plane and go to Texas or go to Miami or go to California. And I was just talking to one of my clients one day. I'd sort of been thinking about this, and I was talking to her. She was studying, getting her keto coaching certification under Maria Emmerich. And she had worked with me and lost 100 pounds and was so passionate now about keto that she wanted to pay it forward. And I said, wouldn't it be cool if we could bring Maria to this area to, talk to folks? And she said, yeah, let's do that. Let's ask her. And so
we love Maria.
And Maria's so game. She said yes. And then we just couldn't stop there. We said, let's make it bigger. Let's bring more people. Let's make it a full-on conference. And so that's really where it started. It just a desire to bring the message to more people and to bring people together, and unfortunately we had the event planned in person for last year, and then COVID hit. So complete shutdown on that, like your event too. And you had your Low Carb USA event happening. And so a lot of things were happening in our area that now we just had to pivot. So this year, we're doing it virtually. It's free for anyone to attend and register, and it'll be inside of a Zoom, but it's going to be live Zoom. So it's not, pre-recorded or anything. And so if you want to be part of the event, you have to show up. And if you want to purchase recordings because you can't be there, that's an option too. Maria's going to do a cooking demo in the sort of lunch break hour, and we'll also have some neat companies there for people to go visit and try out products on breaks and stuff. And we're going to hear from experts like you, Tro.
Yeah, I know you have Will Cole coming, Dom D'Agostino, a lot of people I'm interested. I always like to hear Ben Azadi talk. You bring so much energy, different style, but so much energy. So I'm looking forward to it, Keto Symposium. So how do you go? I want to hear more about you, because honestly, we've talked back and forth because we've commiserated about our conferences basically being shut down. I mean, we had 30 confirmed speakers, a venue, 3-day conference planned, and we were forced to just refund everybody's money. We took a huge hit. Plane tickets bought, venue deposit lost, but it was the right thing. And I know the pains that you went through. So I know
it's devastating. And so at this point, it's just about seeing it through.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing it
and
through.
So I'm happy to be a part of that, and I share that same passion as you to bring that to the East Coast. Brian gets to sit back, and Doug Reynolds holds conferences right in his backyard. But we got to bring it to New York, and we'll work with Doug maybe next year, and we'll make it happen.
Well, I'll tell you, just saying what you're all both talking about, the amount of sacrifice. I know Doug Reynolds lost a ton of money doing the events, and all these people accuse him of saying, oh, he's making all this money, he's doing all this stuff. And you look and you're like, man, it costs a ton of money to rent a hotel and get it's a lot of work. I'm like, I don't want anything. That when Tro said, do you want to do this? I'm like, I don't want anything. I'll come talk, but I'm not doing it, man. It's too stressful for me. I'm too old for that. But it's a big sacrifice because you believe, and it shows that your commitment. I think that's really awesome.
Yeah. And I'm not an event planner at all. So I kind of had no idea what I was getting into, but that's okay. And now we do have an event planner for the virtual one. She's going to be amazing. And the event will be really fun, even though it's virtual. I know people are tired of the virtual space and they really are dying to get together, and we will. But there's so much knowledge to absorb. And I think this is a community that just is constantly desiring to learn.
Absolutely. So how do you get, I'm going to echo what you said, Brian, with Doug Reynolds. He's amazing. I don't know where a low carb movement is without Doug Reynolds. Now with the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, Low Carb Boca, Low Carb San Diego. I mean, that's all him. And we got to mention Pam Devine. So you brought them up, so we have to mention their tireless work. I mean,
and they're West Coast people too, Tro. So we like them.
Yeah, they're chill and relaxed.
Yeah, it's good.
But okay, so let's pivot. Okay, tell us about you. How do you get started in all this? I mean, you're a teacher. What happened? Now, I mean, look at where you are now. Very well respected. I know you in the kind of the Greenwich community. You have a name. People know you. People come to you. And now you're throwing a Keto Symposium. How do you go from, how did this all start? Where did the spark come from?
It started, I was interested in nutrition at an early age, probably because my mother had an eating disorder. And so I was very committed to not being like that and being healthy. So the things that I read about in my free time were always about nutrition. Now, I didn't always follow great advice, eat 6 small meals a day and all that, and low fat, no fat through the 90s. But as a teacher, I think if you have the heart of a teacher and you love to impart information and help educate and inspire, that can be translated into any kind of profession. But it really, I went through a personal, sort of midlife crisis, and also my mother got cancer and diverticulitis and all these health issues. And I had this catalytic moment when she was in the hospital, what they were feeding her. Absolutely, post a diverticulitis attack where you can't eat for 4 days and you can't even have water. And if the infection doesn't clear, they're gonna, cut out a piece of your colon. The first thing that she was given to consume was one of those high fructose corn syrup with red food dye peel back cups to drink. And I lost my mind. I absolutely lost my mind. And I'm not a confrontational person, but I really almost I had it out with this medical team.
Can I talk about diverticulitis, guys? Just so you know, it's basically when you take somebody who's an indigenous area, they don't have any out pockets of their colon. There's no diverticula, which is an outpouching of the colon. It's an area that kind of a weakened wall and outpouches, and then those can become infected, and that's called diverticulitis. Indigenous people don't really have it, and if they have it, it's rare and it's on the right side. But after 20 years in the Western civilization, which means Coca-Cola, Nestle, McDonald's, right, Krispy Kreme and Sam Adams, what happens is these out pockets form. And then it takes about 20 years. So if you take somebody from the Hadza tribe or somebody from the Inuits that are like living their traditional lives, they don't have this. They come to eat our food, they get it. Some people think it's related to diabetes. Some people think it's related to some sort of chronic inflammation in the gut. It's not really clear. But certainly I don't think high fructose corn syrup helps. I don't think that, and there's some data that even it's harmful to the bowel, high fructose corn syrup, animal studies at least, but I'm going to make a quick plug to a company that's taking care of the problem you just said, people in hospitals, people in nursing homes. And Brian, I know you're on the board for Keto Kind, right? When they're looking to be able to provide people with a ketogenic, real alternative in situations like that. So, but okay, so your mom's there, you see this high fructose corn syrup, she's got diverticulitis.
I lost my mind, and that was the beginning of my career change. I said, I want to be a force for good in the nutrition and health space.
And then you went into the nutrition and health space and realized they're telling you the same thing, and that's what the hospitals are doing, right?
Yeah, I realized, well, I'm not going to go work in a hospital. That's not where I can affect the greatest change. But and I feel like, and as maybe you do, that everything that I say is counterculture. And it's a lot of the same conversation.
Against the grain, you mean?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Like literally, right?
There's so much to so much, the calorie conversation, how to read a nutrition label properly. Just there's so much, and still this phobia of fats, and even just keto or ketogenic, anything is like this 4-letter word to some people, and they don't know what it is. They're freaked out by it when you explain energy production in the body and how the body makes ATP, oh, you mean if I ate salmon and broccoli, that's also keto? You know?
Yeah, we call that Mediterranean.
That's
If
why
we
there's
wanna
so
make-
much perception, right? It's all perception. Like you go, okay, I eat a modified Mediterranean diet, excuse me, and they go, oh, that's great. Okay, I just got rid of the bread and rice, and that's my
just don't eat
modification. Oh
grains.
no, my God, you're gonna die. Right? It's crazy.
Right. So that I feel, but I'm very passionate about that conversation, which is why I never get tired of it.
So
How did you change after your training? Did your training, like, did you always say, okay, low carb? How did you start going down this pathway? Because it's not traditional. It's not the typical education that you get.
Yeah, you have to be you have to either see it or experience it, or, I mean, how do you get there? I'm curious for that.
So back in 2010, I started CrossFitting, and the CrossFit community is big in paleo. And that was even before my career change. And before that, I had experimented with being a vegan, which had disastrous consequences for me. I ended up fracturing 2 bones as a result. I mean, mine escalated. I went from, okay, I'm gonna avoid meat for 30 days, and it just went all the way to raw. So I was raw vegan for 4 months until I first broke my collarbone, and then I had a fracture in my hip.
Holy moly!
Yeah.
So your body is kind of, so you saw firsthand that, wait a second, if I take this low fat thing to its nth level, it's did not result in a good experience for me medically. So you're kind of tipped off. Then you go into the CrossFit community, and we know Rob Wolf, and we know they're very supportive of real foods and kind of that paleo movement. And so, but
so I just transitioned over to that and had great results with it.
Christina, was weight ever an issue? Sorry to interrupt. Was weight ever an issue for you? Were you ever overweight or struggled with weight, or is it just you were just trying to be as healthy as you could be?
Gone up and down 20 pounds, up and down. Never really, really overweight, but yeah, I would say it. But what happened really was, so when I was in grad school and I had reintroduced some grain back into my diet. Then I pivoted off of CrossFit. I started training for triathlons instead, and I couldn't lose any weight. I had gained weight while in school, but by the stress, I was working 7 days a week. I was commuting from Connecticut to Maryland. And I didn't know what had happened. And I also took a job in the interim as the nutrition director for a plant-based company, and was eating a lot of that food. I was having, smoothies and grain bowls and that kind of food. And so I just kind of ballooned up and felt really uncomfortable, but then couldn't lose it despite all the exercise in the world, and then realized, oh, I have insulin resistance. I'm pre-diabetic.
Welcome to the club. Tro and I both did the same thing, right? We were both in that same. I never was really vegan, but I was eating more grains and saying, okay, you got to have heart healthy stuff and all that for 6 meals a day, small meals, snacking all day. And so I'm curious, how long were you on the vegan phase of your journey?
The vegan phase was close to a year.
Because a lot of people do it. And when I talk to people, they'll say, I was good for a year or 2 years, then mental health became an issue. Was that ever an issue for you? Like stress, anxiety, those kind of things on that kind of diet?
Not because of that diet, but I also, and I would really love to write a book about this someday. So I grew up in Italy, and I lived on pasta and bread all through my 20s. I mean, serious carbaholic. And I had suffered severe moodiness. I mean, I was very moody and had really, really bad menstrual cycles. And that changed. That really changed when I changed my diet. And it also changed when I got the right supplementation. And then fast forward, I learned about my own nutrigenomic profile, and it validated all these things that I didn't know, that I had stumbled across through experimenting with diet and supplementation. And so it went from, I'm taking prescription meds and the moodiest, crankiest person for like 2 weeks out of the month, to I don't have cramps anymore. I don't suffer anymore.
Stabilized.
Totally. It's life-changing as a woman, life-changing.
And we see that a lot because I take care of a lot of couples. And so sometimes I was like, what have you guys noticed how marriage wise, that kind of stuff? And the husband looks at me like, oh, I don't know if I should say this, but I was like, honey, you seem very calm and even now. Like I wasn't like that before. I was like, you're just like, I wait for you to react and you don't, and you're calm. And I think a lot of people don't appreciate that aspect of it. That's really critical. Because again, if you're a stress eater and you're stressed all the time, what are you gonna do? Eat all the time? Or you're gonna drink? Or you're gonna go to those things? And when we started talking about these kind of things, people said, well, because we're not in a laboratory, we're in real life. So when mom's sick and you have all these things going on, it's gonna make us trigger back to how we cope. Right?
Yeah, and I was hungry all the time. I mean, if you had told me then that I would be eating twice a day, once a day, no way. I would have thought you had 10 heads.
Yeah, and we hear that all the time, Tro. I hear people come and go, this is so easy. I thought it was gonna be so, everyone says it's so restrictive and it's so hard and you're gonna be struggling. And everyone goes, I'm not hungry all the time, so it's easy. I think that's what people forget, that part of it. That is, I think Tro has brought that up a lot. That's the key, is not being hungry all the time, like what you're saying.
Oh, it's so freeing to have
one
that.
of the other things that you mentioned, you said, I don't know if it was the food or what was going on, but we have, in the last 5 years, we've seen so much data on diet and depression improving. I mean, exercise improving, depression, interventional trials with diets, real food diets, improving depression. They had a almond flour based low carb diet, right? Literally an interventional trial showing that, low carb diet with almonds improves depression scores. So, they've shown a ketogenic diet now. Brian, get this. The NIH did a study showing that a ketogenic diet reduces the needs for alcohol withdrawal medications and alcohol cravings.
So
can you
cool.
believe that? So
and we see that, and we had Carnivore Cruise on episode 13, and we talked about that. Remember when we got lambasted way back then when we were little kids still, or you were a little kid, and I was just a senior citizen back then. It's true, and we're seeing that. That's why it's so hard when they study rats in the lab and they say, well, it doesn't work. Well, we're a little different. Like we have rats don't get divorced, as far as I know. I haven't studied rat culture very much, but it's those kind of things when you don't realize, like this is a big thing we're looking at. And I would love to talk to you about that. Like why some people, I've really been diving into the literature on this stuff, is why is it that some people fail, some people crush it? And why is that? And that's why I'm so interested in what you're doing with the Nutrigenomics and all these other things, rather than, okay, let's put you 500 calories a day and see what happens. Whatever you eat, you're going to lose weight.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is we really are, we pay lip service to the fact that we're bio-individual, but we really are. I mean, it's said that 99.9% of our genetic code is the same, but it's in that 0.1 difference where the interesting pieces can reveal themselves. Like for myself, what I didn't realize, that I have variants on, I can tell you all my problem children, magnesium. So I need more magnesium, and magnesium impacts SAMe, S-adenosylmethionine, and the SAMe, if it's low, because it's the biggest methyl donor in the body, it can cause cyclical depression, especially around a period. So you can end up with PMDD, or premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So those are things that I discovered late, but if it could be clinically validated for someone to look at their profile and say, hey, you could use a boost in magnesium here. And do you also have problems with sleep, and all these other things where it would benefit you. And then you can run other labs too to see where you might be low. It's super helpful to start to put together these pieces of the puzzle.
Let me tell you, I think it's almost universal, magnesium deficiency. I really think it's almost universal. Can you tell us more about nutrigenomics? Because really, I don't know, Brian, about you, but I don't know much. Like, I know a little bit. We know about ApoE, right?
Yeah.
We know some people don't methylate folate. I mean, we know certain things like MTHFR and, but I don't know, Brian, they didn't teach me that in med school.
No, and I think it's so important, and I think it's something I'll be taking notes, right? Because it's something that we just don't know about. And you say, okay, why is it some people struggle more? And so this is so helpful to us, because for me, to be honest, I'm a direct primary care doc, and I try to keep the cost down. So I don't order a ton of stuff. I go, okay, I want to know your insulin. I want to know your A1C. I want to know your lipid panel. I want to look at your CRP maybe, and try to minimize that for my patient. But sometimes people say, you know what, I've struggled for all these years, and we have to look deeper than that, right? So sometimes we get the answer just on that. And most of the time we get the answer on that, but sometimes you say, gosh, you're doing everything right. Let's look deeper. And I think that what you're doing is critical to what we're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, so nutrigenomics is really exciting because it's looking at that relationship between nutrition and genes, and how those nutrients might activate or silence genes. And I think there's a distinction between, when we're looking at something called a SNP, which is a single nucleotide polymorphism, in our gene sequence, we have this special language, right? The 4 letters A, G, C, T, and that's where we get some changes. And it's in those changes in our SNPs that will alter those biochemical processes. But you have monogenic genes, so things like you mentioned, like ApoE, maybe a BRCA gene. These are gene variants that by themselves have a huge impact on disease. They're called high penetrance genes, but those are not the genes that you're looking at in nutrigenomics. In nutrigenomics, we're looking at low penetrance SNPs. So what we want to do is, so on their own, they don't have tons of influence, but when you start to group them together and maybe look at them in a particular pathway, say you're looking at detoxification, or you're looking at digestion, or your cardiovascular health, or your neurotransmitter production, together as a collective, they tell an interesting story. But it's a very new field, relatively new. The human genome was completed, the mapping of it was completed in 2003. So it's still very new, and I feel like a beginner in it myself, but it's so exciting, and I feel like what we'll learn in the next 50 years is going to be a game changer, and really be the future of more personalized nutrition.
And how do we apply that to clinical practice? What do we do as practitioners, people listening out there? Is there a certain lab or certain panel that we can get that you say, okay, this gives us a good, because sometimes, it's funny, because I was just talking to a doctor yesterday and we were talking about the importance of insulin. And they said, well, if it's so important, how come no one orders it? And I said, they don't know what to do with the information. People don't want coronary calcium because they don't know what to do with the information. It's like, I don't even want to know. I'll just stay out of that.
Well, there are a number of companies that offer good tests, and they usually come with their own lab reports, but it's best to have a practitioner be able to sit with you with that test and help interpret the information. So that's something that I do. I use a test called the Nutrition Genome currently, and I'm also studying, it's very complicated software, but Peter Diadamo's Opus 23 software to be able to run, even more detailed tests than what the nutrition genome offers, because they select which SNPs to interpret. So Opus 23, a little plug for Opus 23. It is, you can't have a report generated unless it's through a practitioner.
Yeah,
But
can
anyone,
you tell me, so we talked a little bit about, I know back in my obesity medicine certification days, we had, you know, FTO genes, we had the Prader-Willi gene, we had the POMC genes. I mean, all these things. And I got to be honest with you, I've seen, let's just take, I don't want to say maybe late adolescent, pediatric, I basically see patients 15 and older, right? And I've had cases with severe obesity, I mean, 500, 600 pounds, and I've always checked the genetics.
cool.
Right. And they're never, not once have I had somebody come back with FTO, POMC, Prader-Willi, right? These
Interesting.
common, you know, and so I'm like, maybe it's just my experience. I know they're pretty rare. And then even when we do find them, with the exception of Prader-Willi, you know, where we can give leptin, it's like, what do I do with that information? So can you help me understand, like,
yeah, that's a case, I think, where, you know, you don't want to just look at one SNP in isolation. And we do give a lot of power to single SNPs. And that's, I think, how it was treated in the early days. If you just one SNP, let's do this. And MTHFR, that's a well-researched one. But that's not everything either. And it's not sort of this, you know, death sentence, like, oh, you have that, you have that gene, So you want to look at it as a collective. I think with where it becomes interesting is in the nuance, like, for example, is that a phone?
Yeah, that's the world we live in, right? Constant stimulation.
Sorry about
I mean,
that.
I just didn't know what to do with it. You know, I've seen FTO come back sometimes, because we also look at people. Everybody's doing 23andMe now, so we tell them to basically input their data and we review it just to get an idea of, all right, is there some bit of information that can help me clinically? But help me understand this. How do I make use of this data? How do you make use of the data?
Yeah. So, for example, let's just take a couple of genes that may be interesting to look at as a collective. Like if someone is following a plant-based diet, for example, BCM01 is the gene that encodes the conversion from beta carotene to vitamin A. And if you have a variant on that gene, then you could be eating all the carrots in the world and you won't have active vitamin A. And also you'll end up with a vitamin A deficiency, and it will impact your vitamin D as well. You know, FADS2 is another gene that also converts plant-based omega-3 to, you know, ALA or EPA, and some people have problems with that. So
yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about that the other day. I read a lot of different books, and I'm just looking at the genetics of how humans kind of evolved. And, you know, if you look at kind of our genetic ancestors, they're predominantly plant-based, you know, and then you see clinically, right? You see these people who like thrive to some extent on a vegan diet, right? On a whole food plant-based diet. My suspicion is they're genetically predisposed, and they're just removing an absolutely huge insult, which is the modern food environment. But then you have the opposite, these people who like get rid of plants, and all of a sudden their joint pain is gone, their diarrhea is gone, like all these unexplainable things.
totally.
And I'm like, wait a second, maybe you know, so it sounds like what you're saying is there are people who can better metabolize plant and plant food, And there's some
Correct.
people
And
who can't.
Yes. And there are people who say if they have these variants on converting essential nutrients from plants, they're not going to get it, and they'll end up with severe nutrient deficiencies, which they can run a micronutrient test and find out if they have those deficiencies. And it's really tough with the plant-based community because they might have a moral stance and refuse, to eat animals.
Yeah, that's a hard one. That's really, I feel bad for people like that. It really is hard because, your body's telling you, no, you can't do this. And you're saying, I'm going to will myself to do. And it's really tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in the keto community, there's some subtleties too. PPAR alpha, that's one that helps you make ketones. It helps with your beta oxidation, and some people have troubles getting into ketosis, and they may have trouble with that. But
there are some genes, right? That I've seen genes that actually, and it's actually quite prevalent, even in like the Inuits, for example. They've seen that there's something shunting away from ketosis. So there are, right? Can you, I mean, help educate me, because my level of understanding is like so little,
Right. And there's just still so much we're uncovering about this, but it's interesting. I've had a couple of cases of people who've had initial success with their ketogenic plan, and then just, halt and stop getting results. And when we ran Nutrigenomics testing, found that they had a collective variance on saturated fat and on where problems with saturated fat and the adiponectin gene, ADIPQQ, I think it is. And that one, your glucose will spike if you are having too much red meat, too much saturated fat. So you can start to see some kind of those subtleties. And when you put those people on the leaner proteins with vegetables, maybe more of a Mediterranean style, they start losing again. And so that's where this could really be helpful for someone, because it isn't a one size fits all model. Although I think we should all follow, since 99.9% of the genetic code is similar. If we follow certain guidelines, like eat real food, which, nothing processed, that you're already winning just with that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. What's the low-hanging fruit? If you say, just have anyone come in and go, okay, let's try this and see what happens. Because I think then we have to reassess. If you put them on a keto, they can't make keto. And I've seen that. I have some people that are 320 pounds and they just make their ketone level 0.2, even though they're doing all the right stuff, and it's frustrating for them. And so, and what I find when we have a couple of people that we're really working with Ben Bakikio with the exercise part of it, but I'm finding people with very little muscle mass have a lot of trouble. It's a big problem. So we have to look at that combination too, because all of us who've tried to lose weight starved ourselves, and we did whatever we were doing, eating 500 calories a day, doing liquid diet. And I have some interesting cases of patients that once they started putting on muscle mass, everything started changing. Once they started working out, like a lot of people say, I'll do the diet, but I don't have time to exercise. And then they don't get the results that other people do. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
You're so right. You're so right. Well, some low-hanging fruit is okay, eat real food. So is it fresh, and is it whole foods, like single ingredient foods that you're identifying and putting together and making taste good? So cooking fresh, number one. High polyphenols, that's another kind of that's been shown to be beneficial for most humans. And
can you give examples for the listeners of what they can increase in their diet with polyphenols?
So olive oil,
okay,
berries, so those dark berries like blackberries and blueberries, high in polyphenols, and flavonoids too. So, and sulforaphane. I know some people in the carnivore community are against broccoli, but the crucifers have been shown to be helpful for most humans as well, and cancer protective. So those are some low-hanging fruit that seem to benefit most human
Those
beings.
berries keep coming back, you know, the low-hanging fruit. You know, I'm so conflicted because, you know, when you look at the epidemiologic data, right, most of the time it looks like green leafy vegetables decreases mortality. And no matter how far out you go, like the more vegetables you do, it looks like mortality decreases. I don't know if we can even use this kind of fruit frequency questionnaire data that has its own issues. It seems like with fruit, after one fruit, then mortality, after one fruit a day, right? 1 to 2 fruits a day. If you just look at fruit, not fruit and vegetables, right? Just fruit, mortality starts to go up. So it appears to me that some minimal amount of fruit, right, is probably beneficial, right? But then here's the skeptical part of me, right? The skeptical part of me is like, Tro, they've done trials with antioxidants. They literally high-dose antioxidants to people, high-dose vitamins, high-dose polyphenols, high-dose flavonoids, right? And in interventional trials, and nothing. Like literally nothing, right? No, I mean, not compelling outcomes. So, you know, I'm trying to make sense of the data, you know? The skeptical part of me says it's all nonsense, you know, the polyphenols, the flavonoids, and then
we're omnivores, right? We're supposed to eat animal protein. And the thing is most humans aren't eating organ meats. I don't personally love them. So, you know, we got to round out our nutritional profile with some other foods.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me.
Come in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think I think what happens is we get tribal and we get so purist in our view. Every day, if someone says, "Well, so I put a little cream in my coffee. That means I'm not fasting. So should I not do that?" Or what? You know, it's like really, like someone says, "Can I still be a carnivore if I have avocado sometimes?" Well, do what works for you. You're not in a club where you have to you're not getting checked by everyone else. I mean, don't worry about it. So what I find is the stress of all these different inputs. And, you know, I guess someone's like, you know, they're drinking soda and they're like, is chewing gum bad for me? I was like, well, drinking soda is what's going to kill you. He's like, you're smoking 3 packs a day. He's like, does the loud noise from the road going to kill me? I'm like, well, I'd quit smoking first. Then we'll worry about the road noise next, right?
Can we talk about dairy though for a second?
Absolutely.
That was really interesting. Like 70% of the globe doesn't have the genetic adaptation for dairy.
Yeah.
That's a huge, and I confess that if I couldn't consume dairy, probably doing keto would be super challenging. But recently I learned, hey, my CRP levels are elevated, and I'm blaming the dairy. And I actually I'm not supposed to eat dairy. I've done food intolerance testing, which I know is not 100% accurate. I've done, you know, my Nutrigenomics. I know the LCT, it is not good. So I'm not supposed to eat it. And I do sometimes anyway, because it helps me stay off sugar. But what's your feeling on what's your position on dairy? Because it does seem to be pretty inflammatory for a lot of people.
Well, you know, Brian, can I tackle this one? Because I've gone back and forth so many times. Then maybe, you know.
I'm not the only one. I'm glad to hear that, Tro.
Yeah, look, so if you look at the epidemiologic data, it looks like full-fat dairy is beneficial, right? So if you look at this crappy food frequency questionnaires, people who can afford yogurt, you know, so to speak, tend to do better, right? So people who can afford, you know, full-fat real dairy tend to do better. Now, so then, okay, I'm like, and look at a low-carb diet. It's a low-carb, iconic low-carb food, right? And low-carb does better for weight loss. So every part of me wants to love dairy.
Yeah.
Okay. Every part of me wants to love dairy. right? But the reality is most people are lactose intolerant. So if it's not fermented, you're running into that issue, right? And I've seen too much about the casein protein, right? Too much, specifically about the casein protein being pro-inflammatory. And here's the thing, that hunter-gatherer who was living off of meat and vegetables, he never stopped, we killed the animal, just hold everything, I'm going to churn the butter, and I'm going to lather it all over the ribeye here, right? So the way we use dairy, I'm not sure is how it was designed to be used. It was designed to get a mammal to keep eating, to grow.
And I'll tell you, as a anecdote, I know how we love anecdotes. I have a lady since July of last year, she has lost weight every single week. Her goal weight to get to was 185. She's 168 now. And she cut out dairy, she cut out nuts, and she's eating meat. And for her, this is working. I'm like, I tell her every week, okay, we'll see. Don't worry if it plateaus. You're going to plateau. Everyone does. She hasn't. I've seen everyone I know plateaus at some point. She hasn't plateaued, and she works out doing Ben's workout twice a week, Ben Bikikio's workout. And she's active. She's cut back on her stress, which I think is a huge, massive factor that we don't talk about enough. And she cut out dairy and nuts. And she said, once I did that, everything changed for me. Everything changed. So it could be she's one of those 70%. If you're playing the odds, we're in that 70%. You're probably not the 30%, especially if you're morbidly obese already to start, whether you're not coming to see us. So I think there's a lot of truth to that. And I think that's something we really have to look at. And I think that may be, and I don't know. I observe stuff and I don't know the answers. I'm just a doc, but I see people switch to a carnivore diet, my daughter included. Brett that we've had on the podcast a couple of times, depression, anxiety, stress got better. And I was like, I don't know why. Is it because something they're not eating, or is it because the meat is hitting us? I don't know. Did they have a deficiency that the meat is giving them now all of a sudden in eggs? I don't know. But it's very intriguing to me that I see it from a physiological, like most people who I know are carnivore, very peace-loving kind. Yeah, Sean Baker, I had a great interview with him, very peace-loving kind. He'll fight with people for sure because he gets frustrated, but I think there's a stability that comes. I don't know why it is, but I see that. I don't know why. Maybe you have an answer for me. Maybe it is getting rid of the dairy and the nuts and all the other stuff that they do better from an inflammatory. We do have data showing that inflammation in the brain, insulin resistance in the brain can make all these things worse. So I don't know.
My suspicion, I can't back it up, but I did write a research paper where some studies revealed that our protein targets, that what we calculate as enough protein, is too low. And so my suspicion is that people following a carnivore diet are way increasing, right? Because that's everything. And then also having a nice variety of different options. And then they're just having more, which is what's needed for neurotransmitter production. And so, yeah, you get the depression and anxiety lifting, and that's huge. My only concern is that, like, what if there are some people in their gene SNPs that they don't make bacteria very well unless it's coming from fibrous veggies, and that shows up too.
And what's interesting, there are people like Sean O'Mara saying he's having clinical success with people who are eating fermented vegetables like sauerkraut and kimchi and things like that, with regard to the gut microbiomes and lectins and all that, where they lose that autoimmune inflammatory effect.
Yeah, I know personally, taking lectins out of the diet was huge change. And I invite people to just notice, they kind of have that knowing of, when I eat that, I really don't feel great. Or I have really bad gas, or just, my anxiety's up. Why, what did I do?
Absolutely.
And people just need to
listen,
trust
yes.
That intuition. Yeah. Like,
experiment,
your body is telling you,
Yeah.
and it's, I don't know why, it's like, think about it, or start to put more awareness, journal. Yeah.
The symptom tracker. So can I talk about this? Because the average doctor would say that's placebo, right? Or it's just too complicated to understand, right? I've seen people go carnivore, like they had terrible diarrhea, with all vegetables, then they went carnivore, and then they started one by one introducing vegetables, and they're like, wait a second, it wasn't all vegetables. I'm tolerating broccoli, right? And I enjoy it. And it's like, okay, maybe there was something that happened where they switched the intestinal flora. Maybe they're just bringing back things and paying close attention to what their body feels good with and what it doesn't feel good with. I had somebody bring back nuts, terrible back pain, terrible, joint pain. Is it real? I don't know. I have no way of verifying, right? But that person who subjectively did that, eliminated it, then reintroduced it, he will swear by it.
It's real to them.
Yeah, exactly. He's not in back pain. And I mean, I don't know. Is it real? I don't know. Right? There's no way I could know.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Maybe one day we'll be able to get an arthritis, continuous monitor. But like until then, I just have to trust the patient and what they tell us. So I'm so glad.
And I really don't care if you feel better and you're working out and you could go do stuff now. I have people all the time saying my joints don't hurt, my back doesn't hurt. They come in there, they need a knee replacement. And all of a sudden they go, yeah, I'm working out every day and my knee doesn't hurt. Okay, cool. Let's keep doing whatever is working, right? Let's just it's symptomatic. If they're symptomatically better, I don't care why necessarily. I would like to know so I can help other people, but yeah, it's pretty amazing. And so have you had people that were doing ketogenic and then it's just not working, and then you switch them to another diet and they do better, or they, like you were saying, sometimes people do more?
In these few cases, yeah, that's a great question. In these few cases where it was really about actually decreasing the fat, it's not the norm, right? Again, it's variance. It's the whole conversation around, saturated fat, it's so evil, it's so terrible. It's a variant to, it's just like the lactose. To be able to tolerate lactose, it's a variant. You're an anomaly. Genetically, you are actually normal. You are wild type if you do not break down lactase or lactose, both. Lactose. Not,
yeah. If you don't have enough lactase.
Yeah, so it is an anomaly to not be able to tolerate saturated fat and to need a lower fat situation. But that's, again, those are just very particular, so that most people will do great. And the same thing if they have issues with PPAR, then they may have really struggle getting into ketosis. So
and that would make sense. And then they're hungry more often, they have trouble. I don't know how insulin correlates with all that, because what I see is generally, but I have some outliers, Short, I'm sure you do too, that their insulin's way high and they can fast. I was like, I'm thinking, how can they fast if they can't really get to their fat? So maybe they can. Maybe certain people can, because other people are trying to eat 500 calories a day and they go to fast food on the way home because they're flipping out.
Some people don't do well with fasting, right? And if you start to feed them, but again, it's eat real food.
Yeah, eat real food. Yeah. I think that's what it comes back to. That's what we're saying all the time. And then it may be, I think Tro is the first one I heard saying this, like, look, in the first, like for our people, they're so metabolically sick when they come to us. They've tried everything and they've gained weight and they're diabetic. So he's like, look, eat when you're hungry, just cut the carbs and let's get you on real food and see what happens. And then we could cut the fat down. We could cut the portion size down. We could cut the meal frequency down over time. And what we find is most people naturally do it. They go, oh yeah, I skipped lunch yesterday. I wasn't even thinking about it. And it's not a big deal to them. But if you tell me at the beginning, we're going to fast, it's crazy. Like, I don't like that approach. I'm more even keeled on stuff. I like to say, okay, well, I think ultimately I say what works for you. Right. And I have people, and it's Tro, this is why what we do is so fun. I have some, like one lady yesterday, she's been doing great, losing weight. She's fantastic. And she goes, oh, I had last week I had a turkey club sandwich on sourdough. I'm like, cool. Did you enjoy it? Was it good? And she didn't have any, I was stressed. I hate. She goes, if it takes me, this is my life from now on. So I want to enjoy it. And I'm going to sometimes have something. Okay, cool. But other people have that sandwich, then every day they're eating donuts and they can't stop. Like Rob Sivers of the world, they can't stop once they start. And some people can say, yeah, I'll have pizza if I go to my uncle's house and he makes his pizza once a year, I go, but you're not doing it every single day. Right.
And I love that approach. That is in my heart the goal for the people I work with is that metabolic flexibility, right? To be able to have this and then go right back to what actually works for you. And so, yeah, if having an occasional sandwich floats their boat, then.
And if they're metabolically healthier than they were, because at the beginning when you're diabetic and your sugar's 400, I was like, you can't float your boat right now.
No,
Unfloat your boat for a little while, and then let's get you healthier, and then you can float your boat. So I have people that consult with me that have been doing keto that lost 40 pounds. I go, your insulin's normal, your triglycerides, everything's normal. Liberalize your carbs a little bit. Don't worry. Don't be like militant about it. You know, there's times when you look at that, and that's why with BioLane and Tro, that they're seeing a different population. If you have someone like Sean Baker, I guarantee you that guy could eat way more carbs than any of us can, and they're going to go to his muscle tissue. And I see vegans doing that.
Exactly. I mean, you're so right. Charles Poliquin, right? The famous strength coach. He says, earn your carbs. You got to earn them. And otherwise you don't get to eat them.
So if you're an accountant that's 300 pounds of diabetic, sorry, you have to get off your butt a little bit. And I think that's what we're learning a lot. Not only that, the emotional aspects, the stress aspects, and dealing. How do you? I have one lady now. She's 300 pounds now. She goes and hits her punching bag when she gets home from a stressful day at work. Instead of going and grab cookies, she goes, "I hit my punch. I feel great, and I'm happy." I'm like, "Okay, cool, it's working. We switched something up, right?" So I think there's so much of that we're missing out on, and I think stress will activate a lot of these things. I mean, I'm telling you,
anti-inflammatory lifestyle isn't just about the food. It's are you sleeping? Because if you're not sleeping, that's way more stressful in the body than anything. You could eat perfectly, but if you don't get sleep, you're not going to lose a pound.
And if you're stressed, you can't sleep. And when you can't sleep, you're stressed. So it's a cycle, right? That we have to look at that and say, hey, we have to look at the light. We have to look at the big picture.
Toxic thoughts, all that. You just being in a negative state is going to put you in fight or flight. And that cascade of chemicals, you get nowhere. You'd be spinning your wheels, but eating perfectly.
Yeah, I think that is, we'll talk about Tro. We're going to do an episode on this because I'm telling you, I could look and say they're not going to have success. I could see a mindset. I could see stress levels. They don't take care of themselves. And there's a couple of great, it's called, there's a podcast called Feel Better, Live Longer. It's a Dr. Chatterjee, very great. He has great people talking about the mental aspects of this stuff, the stress and meditating, just pray, meditate, take it easy for 10 minutes.
It's 80-20 mindset. It's 80% psychology. I'm sure you see that with the success. The 20% is the strategy. Like, okay, we're going to do this version of a low carb diet for you. And these are the foods that you like to eat. These are the foods that you tolerate well. And then the 80% is, how are you sticking with it? And what is going to keep you on track? And how do you say no to the obstacles that are coming your way? I tell my clients, it's a little bit like you're in a Spartan race and you've got all these obstacles. You've got this person's party, you've got the buffet over there, and you have hurdles in the beginning and things to say no to. But that's all up here because the sugar is out of your system. So all of that is like, it's just pulling on you and wanting to participate and handling, how do you handle that?
Yeah, all that life gets in the way of all of our best intentions. That happens, like stress in life and getting fired, whatever, all these things. So I have a couple I want to fire out of each. Tro, we can open up the questions. I would love to do that because we have an expert here that we're learning from. But what's your take on when we're talking about not getting enough protein? That's a big thing I'm seeing now. I've talked to some of there's a big battle going on, more fat or less fat, more protein, less protein. And how does whey protein, people often ask, like, do you supplement? I generally don't recommend that to people unless I really don't, because that's not the issue I'm really looking at. But I think we can use animal proteins, better off than whey protein. I would love to hear your take on that when people are saying, okay, I want to get as much, because they look and they're, I can't eat this much. My daughter she's doing carnivore now. She goes, I can't eat this much protein. How the heck do I get it in? She's trying to figure out ways to get more protein in to meet what they're saying she should have.
I'm not a protein shake person. I like to eat my food, and I'm not saying I don't have that very once in a while, or I'm not against it. It's not a personal preference. I'd rather eat something or not eat, and as far as whey, again, that's personal tolerance. Me, if I have whey, it is it is digestive distress central. So that's also, I know it's supposed to be the most bioavailable form of protein powder, but I'm not a fan of whey personally.
I'm with you on that. For me,
I'm gonna tell you without. I literally. So I'm just gonna say that I get it. I totally get it. I think it's not an ideal. I literally have a tub of whey protein right here, and I'll tell you why. For me, it's I have the most unruly appetite. I used to work in the hospital, and I kid you not, I've had issues with food addiction and huge binge eating issues. I literally would eat the chocolate. Like I had this colleague who'd sit right next to me in the hospital, doctors lounge, and we had, different offices, and my office was right next to hers. I would eat her chocolate. And I said to myself one day, you know what? I just need something like chocolate to get me through. So I'm like, I bought myself a NutriBullet. I bought myself some, whey protein, chocolate whey protein. I tried to get as high quality as I can, realizing that, whey is just when you make cheese from dairy, right, from the milk, that it's basically the excess. And so cacao, little sweetener, whey protein, put it in a NutriBullet, and holy crap, did that help me transition off of my food addiction to be able to have that, alternative, rather than like continually eating my friend's chocolate and feeling embarrassed about it.
man, you could have done Maria Emmerich's
I know.
pudding, man. I'm
Her stuff is so good. His stuff is so good
for sure.
So she's so talented, man.
Yeah. So I, not that I recommend it, but I tell people, it's where are you on your journey? Does it help you? Is it an improvement off of whatever's going on, or is it your ideal? So same thing with meat. People are like, well, we should all be getting regenerative farming, grass fed, grass finished meat. And I believe it's the ideal, but it's like, where are you?
Yeah, do what you can do. You have to look at your finances. You look at that stuff, because I think these arguments are, look at eggs. Anywhere I go in the world, they have eggs. No matter how poor you are, you have eggs available. Like, you can get a good protein source there, right?
And didn't Rob Wolf do a study where he found that there wasn't a huge difference between the grass-fed versus grain-fed?
Yeah, Peter Ballerstedt, I sat down with, who's an expert in this area. I looked at his graph. He showed omega-3, omega-6 ratios, and grass-fed versus regular beef. You go, okay, a little bit different. There may be hormone differences, things like that, obviously. And humane raised meat is what's important. So if you have a local rancher and you can get it, that's ideal, right? That's the ideal way to do it. But then you look at chicken, ranch-fed chicken, all these things, and you look at, oh my gosh, you're way better off from that standpoint, looking at having whatever red meat you can get, or whatever fish you can get, really, for the most part, other than farm raised. I think there's a difference in fish for sure, because of what they're feeding them. And, so if you have chickens that are, free range, that they're out there eating bugs and stuff, I think that's a good way to go.
Absolutely.
And I'll tell you from my experience, just going to Cuba and Guatemala, their chicken is different and it tastes so much better. And the breasts are like real chicken breasts. They're not like 5-pound chicken breasts. Like, that's not normal, that they don't get that big, right? So I think there's a lot of that with artificial stuff that we're injecting, growth hormones and all those things, that we're starting to see some
now, when you go to Guatemala, are you also reintroducing some things like beans or tropical fruits? My mom is from Costa Rica, so I don't know. I used to eat lots of papaya and mango and felt great eating those fruits, but
yeah, and I think that's it. And you depend on the person, seeing, like, if I have a choice between having a Coke, like, the problem is soda. They're telling all the diabetics, you need this for energy. This is going to make you stronger. You just don't eat dessert and don't eat fruit and eat, that kind of thing. When you look at it, you think, wow. I pulled off a crazy Tro. I don't know if you saw me tweet about this. On Cinco de Mayo, I spoke to a 23 Hispanic females who are metabolically sick.
I saw
and they
that.
work for a fruit company. And there's like, is fruit bad for you? I'm like, oh no, this might be my last time talking to you, but let me explain myself here, right? But I can tell you, fruit juice for sure is bad for you, and dried fruit is probably not your best choice. But all of them are going to have a continuous glucose monitor now, so they'll be able to tell me, does it make a difference or not, right? It's not my opinion anymore. It's what we see.
Yeah, that will, and I don't know why I just thought of this, but before COVID, I was working inside of an oncology practice in Manhattan, and the oncologist who brought me on came from this old paradigm of telling his patients, to eat whatever they wanted. It's okay. You have cancer. You can eat cake and ice cream, and don't want you to lose weight during treatment. And to his credit, I mean, he made a lot of changes, and he would offer free soda in the room while people were getting their infusion. And so we made a lot of changes together, but I don't know, you just sparked that memory of, just do whatever you like because you're sick.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing. And as a matter of fact, I have friends who got in trouble the other way, saying cut out processed food and sugar when you're going through chemotherapy, radiation. There is some data on fasting, from USC. And so you start looking at that and you say, okay, our biggest concern is weight loss. So how do I keep weight on in a healthy manner, right? If I need to add more olive oil, do I need to add more avocados and, meat, things like that. And so, yeah, I have anecdotal stories of people going through chemotherapy and radiation better, eating a healthier diet. It makes sense especially if you're in ketosis. It makes sense that you want to shove all the chemo into the bad cells that can't run on ketones, if you have that physiologic ability to do so. So I think there's a lot of there's so much like crazy. I mean, the thing is, you say something like that and people say, oh, they're saying keto cures cancer. That's exactly not what I'm saying, right? To be clear, I'm saying, hey, you may go through treatment better and you may have better outcomes in the long run. It may help you in fighting these things, because we step back and look. I think the big thing that we've missed in this in our discussion is the distinction between visceral fat, subcutaneous fat, inflammatory markers like you're saying, CRP, and looking at that with overall metabolic health. Like we focus so much on the BMI. It's like, well, if you're Sean Baker, he's going to have a high BMI, but look at him. You say he's obese. No, he's not obese, right? And look, he has zero visceral fat compared to everyone else. Coronary calcium score is 0. So it's hard to say, okay, he's crazy. I said that quietly so he wouldn't hear me. When I heard him, I go, this guy's just doing it for a gimmick, right?
Are obese according to BMI. It's a terrible marker.
Yeah. And so it's hard because so many people are stressed. They're like, I got to get down. My doctor's out to get to 120. Well, you're 280 pounds that's a stretch, right? Let's just take it a day at a time, see where we can go. If you put on 20, that's what I tell people. If you put on 20 pounds of muscle and you don't lose any weight, am I happy with that? Are you kidding me? You're metabolically healthy. And if you want to sustain it, that's what we have to do. I think that's what, because it's important to know that a lot of people who are quote experts have never struggled with their weight. So they go, just do what I do. Mm-hmm. Like an ex-smoker goes, oh, I quit cold turkey. That's what everyone has to do. Well, maybe it doesn't work. And we have some people who jump in the water. They go, if it's cold water, I'm going to jump in, or some people go in and out, and it takes them an hour to get in the pool, or you jump in and get it over with, right? Or you pull the Band-Aid off, some people just do it slowly, like just yank it off and be done with it, So I think it's just a personality type. We have different personalities that we have to, like you said, really it's N of one. Like we're that person in front of us, we say, okay, what will work for you? What's acceptable? Because if I give you something that's great, if you hate red meat, I go, okay, you're carnivore now. They're like, well, I don't like this, right? If you hate vegetables, I'll say, okay, Sean Baker, you're vegan now. It's like, wait a minute, I don't like this, doctor. It's not very good,
doctor.
Yeah, I mean, it would be insanity if we gave somebody like an antibiotic that's causing somebody nausea and vomiting and saying, no, you have to keep taking that, right? It would be insanity if we, gave somebody an antibiotic and they started seeing, blue spots, right? To tell them to continue to take that. If somebody doesn't like the way something makes them feel, why are we pushing it on them? Right? Absolutely. I 100% agree.
That would be as crazy as giving insulin resistant people more insulin.
I know. Yeah, right. Why are you gaining weight? And then saying, why are you gaining weight?
And they get mad at them and say, this guy's an idiot. Why is he gaining weight? Oh, because you gave him insulin.
Exactly.
And you gave him the red drink in the hospital. So we see that all that even now with orthopedic surgeons, there's a new thing that, where they're giving them this high sugar soybean concoction. They go, this is a pre-op drink for you. Here you go. It's like, oh, I want to increase my post-op infections. The number one cause of post-op infection, high sugar. And so you say, well, it doesn't make sense, guys.
Well, and to go back to your point about just metabolic health, the catalytic person who literally caused me to flip the switch in my mind to switch to a ketogenic diet was Thomas Seyfried. I listened to him speak, and he articulated so clearly for me why a ketogenic diet could help me reverse my insulin resistance, and that it was all about metabolic health. That is the root. So even though we're talking a little bit about genetics today, it's really like the lifestyle like how are you living those day-to-day moments that impact your metabolic health that also may turn on certain genetic predispositions. I have so many genes like obesity predisposition, but I think, just because I always was an athlete and did always exercise a lot, it helped me a lot, no matter what I was doing. Until, one day it was like it just stopped working. And that's just also a function of aging or, being over 40.
Well, I have a question because this area is outside of my wheelhouse for sure. With epigenetics and is it, do we, like if you run a test on someone, they completely change their diet, they cut out whatever, all these things. Do you see changes there, or that's your genetic code and that's there no matter what?
Genetic code is your genetic code.
Yeah, your genetic code is your genetic code, but
you do that test once. That's not
exactly.
That's not like running your A1C or your CRP or any other test. I run other labs like an organic acids test is really, really cool to see the byproducts of the metabolites from your metabolism. And that is a snapshot of the moment. And then you could probably say, okay, let's run a nutrigenomics test. Let's make these dietary changes and then run that lab again 6 months, a year later and see if those markers have improved, the metabolites, the neurotransmitters,
if you can follow the downstream, exactly. You can follow the downstream products of those things and then see if your adjustments are helping, if they're making a difference. And then you're looking at the patient and seeing their clinical success also at the same time and how they're feeling.
Yeah. Or just even like a micronutrients test and to see how those nutrients have improved over time. Unfortunately, a lot of those tests, they're considered sort of like quack tests, even though they're amazing functional labs. So I don't know why they're not run by more physicians.
Well, I think they're like me. I'm old school. I go, okay, look, all these here, just take magnesium here, take vitamin D, or this is probably gonna be good. And so you kind of eyeball and go, okay, like Tro's saying, everyone's magnesium deficient, so they generally will benefit. But then you're figuring out, okay, ones that they don't metabolize certain things, or certain people I see they're in the sun all the time, their vitamin D is low, right? Or they just don't absorb, they don't transition, they don't their production problem. Yeah.
Too. Yep. For the vitamin D conversion for VDR could be compromised. Yeah.
Christina, are there any other critical information you got to teach us? We're like kids, so you're like a teacher, so you could teach us stuff right now. You say, hey, docs, look, get your act together. Here's what you need to do with your patients.
And how do people reach out to you if they want to get more insight, they want to talk to you, they want to find out about the conference? That'll be helpful too if you could do that.
Yeah, so the conference website is ketosymposium.com. And if they want to get in touch with me, I actually have 2 places they can get in touch with me. There's theketonutritionist.com or thriveresultscoaching.com. So those are 2 places they can reach out. And the Nutrigenomics lab it's called Nutrition Genome, and I have links for all that too, if you want me to send you that.
Really cool. I think any questions? Let's see if the audience has any questions. We're going to take some questions. Sometimes they're eager to ask questions, sometimes not. So we'll just see, because I don't see any questions yet. I think maybe it's even above my head.
It's above our pay grade here.
Yeah,
it's so great. I mean, I'm jealous. You should come to California. It's so nice. We could use you here for sure.
Where are you?
I'm in San Diego.
Yeah, it's so nice there.
Yeah.
I think this next year.
I'm still waiting for an invitation, so I'm insulted. Brian.
If San Diego wasn't, it would be a perfect place. If it wasn't in California, it'd be a perfect place to live. I don't know. We have all kinds of nutty rules and stuff here, but other than that, I like it.
Yeah, there's San Diego in Texas.
I think I'll be on the road a lot this next year. COVID has kind of cooped us all up and ready to get out there and have some adventures and see some people.
Yeah, it's nice to see people and see faces. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some more than others. Toro and I have been practicing whenever we go to conferences, everyone's social distance. Before this, they social distance from us. So it's always been safe. No one ever wants to be around us. They just, well, there's a big circle where we're standing and everyone's talking to Gary Taubes and stuff.
I don't believe you.
All right, guys, this is awesome. This is awesome. This is awesome. Maybe we'll do it again. And well, we'll certainly see you at the Keto Symposium, guys. And Brian, maybe I'll see you in a couple months in San Diego.
Yeah, you'll be in San Diego. I'm excited about
Yeah.
that. That'll be good. It'll be good to have you, man. I can show you around a little bit. That's cool. Good stuff. So yeah,
right.
everyone, hey, thanks for listening. I know we went a little long, but you know, we're going to, and we have an expert in their field, and you get free information here. And you know, I think it's helpful. I think these are things. I think a lot of people start looking into that, and you know, I'm very intrigued by it also. So I think, you know, I think some of my patients are definitely going to benefit. I think all of us benefit from it, for at least knowing, say, okay, this doesn't agree with me, and listening to your body too. I think that is such a critical point. It's just because it worked for your neighbor doesn't mean it's going to work for you. You know, and you know, again, temper your expectations. Sometimes you think you're going to lose 40 pounds in a week. It ain't going to happen, guys. It ain't going to happen. Just, I haven't had it happen to anyone yet.
I think we should do a little research study, and see how, you know, different people do on different protocols.
I would love that. Are you kidding me? We add certain foods in or take away certain foods and see what happens. Say, oh my gosh, look, you know. So I think, you know, a lot of people are doing elimination type diets and trying to say, you know, and that may be, you know, that may be one of the answers. If you're having reactions, say, let's get rid of as much stuff as we can and then add stuff back in and see what happens. You know, I think that's, you know, science. And then you say, oh my gosh, when I eat this, I feel terrible. So at least then, you know.
Yes. Yes. And we could run their nutrigenomics data and say, okay, and for best results, let's see, and then collect the data on that.
That's probably the future. You know, that's probably the
Yeah, and maybe the
that
future
and
of saying,
CGM
hey, look,
data,
let's try
you
for
know?
3 months, see what happens, and reassess and check your stuff and say, oh, okay, now we need to make it. But if people are having success, they could save money. But I think at time you go, okay, we got to figure this out. I have a guy in mind that I'm thinking, you know, he's not responding the way he should, doing a lot of good stuff, and he's right on, because I could tell you from the continuous glucose monitor, and it's Ramadan and he's fasting and he's doing all the right stuff. So it's frustrating when it's very slow. You go, okay, what is it we need to eliminate? So yeah. That would be a great test to run some people, especially if they're very frustrated. So don't give up, get tested, right?
Absolutely. Keep being a detective. Just keep digging for more information. And we're so lucky that we have these kinds of tests to just keep. And it could be just that one little nugget that unlocks.
Yeah, one thing, one little tweak, and there you go, and you're good. And you go, okay, that's not, you know, it's just like anything. If you're allergic to something, like for me, well, I had a mold allergy. So foods with mold in it, I would react every time. So I realized, okay, I got to stay away from, I just knew it. I knew if I had certain things I would react, but it wasn't the food itself. It was the mold on top of the food, right? That I was allergic to, because I was exposed to mold in my old office. Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's a whole other can of worms. Yeah. The mold and the mycotoxins and.
Okay, we'll do another episode, Tro. Let's do it. Let's make it happen.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I would love to talk about those things, because that's. I think more people are affected than we know, for sure, and I've seen it more in my practice now.
Yeah. Are you so sensitive that now you can walk into a building and even just smell it?
Well, I'll tell you. You know, everyone gets to hear my story, but I was having major stuff like prednisone for 2 years. It was major, and it turned out there was mold in my office, in my old office, and it still continued. But it got better and better. So now it's extremely rare, very rare. But whenever I had pecans, walnuts, so it's interesting. So a good friend of mine, we go stay at their house overnight and it turns out they had a leak and I didn't know it. So that mold, whatever it is, was at their house. So if I have the same food somewhere else, I don't get it. If I'm at their house and I get that combination, it messes me up. So I started realizing that. So now it's the only time I ever get it is if I go to my friend's house and visit for a while, believe it or not. And so I'm kind of like the canary, I guess. I'll tell you if you have mold in your house, because I'm sensitive to it still, but the reaction has gotten way better since I'm not having that chronic exposure every day, you know? So when I was we were in Denver at a medical conference, nothing. No problem. I was in Guatemala, El Salvador. I'm in the jungle, nothing. I come back first day at my office, I'm start getting hives. I'm like, is this stress? But it turned out it was more of a toxicity that I was having. So it's crazy. Like, you know, so people don't realize that sometimes, you know, we think we're sick or we have a cold, and they don't realize, oh, it's my dog or my cat or some kind of dander or something.
I had a woman I worked with who was itchy all over, and we started just with elimination, and just protein, vegetables, and the itchiness kind of localized and she was drinking a lot of wine. So, just said, okay, let's go low histamine, even added like quercetin and nettles, just supplementation. Her itchiness kind of localized down to just a little piece on her arms, but it was still really bothering her. So then we ran mold and mycotoxin testing. Great Plains Lab has a good mold test. Sure enough, boom. Mold, like she really did have a severe case.
And the food will exacerbate that, right? When you have certain foods with mold, it makes that effect worse. That's why she got better, changed the diet, but it wasn't enough to get totally rid of it. Wow, that's amazing.
Isn't that cool? Yeah. So, yeah, that's a whole other fascinating topic.
We got to have that one. We got to bring you back, and we're going to do an entire topic on that. A lot of people ask me about heavy metals. A lot of people ask me about environmental exposure. Maybe, I need to be educated, clearly. So we got to have you back and to do that.
I'd be delighted. Thank you so much.
Christina, thanks for joining us on the road, traveling around, and we're it's
super fun to talk to you. Yeah, I'm in the hotel room in Virginia on the way to Florida, and who knows where I'll go next.
Hey, you're moving around. That's kind of nice. I'm jealous. That's good.
Around, yeah. Yep, feeling a little antsy post COVID. So
cool. So we'll definitely reconnect. And guys, that's ketosymposium.com. Really looking forward to that one.
Yes, it's free, so you have nothing to lose, just more knowledge, everything to gain.
And can I heckle Tro during his talk, or do I have to wait till after?
Of course you can.
All right, cool. I'll log in for sure.
All right, guys.
Hey,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Patreon supporters. Thanks for being with us live. This is cool stuff. This is cutting edge, and we learned a lot. So, Christina, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Tro. Be well.